Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, the Real Gerald Quinn, recording this on the 21st of January on a Tuesday as we have completed now the college football season. We'll talk more about that. Episode 990. We are just 10 more, 9 more episodes until we get to 1,000. So we should hit 1,000 probably end of February, early March. So we're on the countdown to 1,000, episode 990, titled "A New Day in College Football." We'll talk about a big night for Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes. But we begin as always, like, subscribe, or share. Your support is greatly appreciated. On this podcast, you can find this podcast anywhere where podcasts are available. Um, as always, we begin with the game of the week. Really wasn't hard to choose from. Buffalo just gets by Baltimore 27-25. A brutal loss for the Baltimore Ravens on so many levels. Give Buffalo all the credit. We can pick apart Baltimore, and I will pick apart Baltimore in a second here. But here's what you gotta say about Buffalo. Buffalo, you know, we talk about the pressure that was on Baltimore coming into this game. There was just as much pressure on Buffalo. Remember, Buffalo has been similar to Baltimore, maybe even more so than Baltimore. Buffalo has been knocking at the door for about the last 4 to 5 years. And there was a point, last year, after last year, even after the year before last, they had two brutal losses in consecutive years at home in the division round. 2 years ago, they lose to Cincinnati, and the Cincinnati game that really wasn't even close. And then last year was a killer because I actually thought that they were better than Kansas City. I really did. I picked Buffalo to win that game last year, and they lose a heartbreaking game to the Kansas City Chiefs last season. So I wonder whether or not that Buffalo that time had ran out as far as them, had that championship window had closed or not. And we see teams, we saw it was seeing it with San Francisco this year, them getting to the Super Bowl and losing twice and getting to all these conference championships. Sometimes your window closes and you have to reload and rebuild. But that was not the case. Buffalo, of course, came back, had a tremendous season, and give them all the credit in the world for winning this game because I'm telling you right now, Baltimore clearly is a better team from a standpoint of talent. It's not even like Baltimore. Baltimore was -3 with the turnover situation and still had a chance to win this game. They outgained Buffalo 416 to 273. Buffalo's offense in the second half was non-existent. They had one good drive in the second half, just one. 6 points in the second half after scoring 21 in the first half. And really, it was Buffalo doing what Kansas City has done to teams over the last half decade, what the New England Patriots did to teams for over 20 years. It's not so much they made these spectacular great plays. They just didn't beat themselves and allowed you to make the critical mistake that would lose the game. And that's what Buffalo, that is the shift. That's the difference in Buffalo this year, in particular Josh Allen this year versus past years. Allen's turnovers have been cut down mightily. Buffalo, they don't turn over the football. It's just that simple. Now, they're going to face a team come Sunday that also doesn't turn over the football and hasn't in the last 8 games. So we'll see what happens with that. But that was Baltimore's undoing. But again, give Buffalo all the credit in the world for this victory. If we would have, they would have lost, I wouldn't have went too crazy because I just thought, I thought Buffalo was going to win a close game because I just, Baltimore basically showed you who they've been this season. That was a team with 5 All-Pro players, 9 Pro Bowlers that lost 5 games. It's a team that lost to lost to the Cleveland Browns, one of the worst teams in the NFL, and lost to the Las Vegas Raiders, one of the worst teams in the NFL. They win one of those two games. The game is in Baltimore, not in Buffalo. Like that was a team. Baltimore showed you who they were. They could be overpowering. They could be spectacular. They could look unbeatable at times, and then they can also look like a team that can't get out of its own way. And we saw it this year with penalties. And in this game, you saw it with turnovers. Those three turnovers absolutely destroyed them. Um, Two of them, of course, by Lamar Jackson. And here's what I'll say about Lamar Jackson. I'm a fan of Lamar Jackson. I'm a fan of Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson is without question a top quarterback in this league. I think Lamar Jackson, uh, we know what he's done as far as the MVPs, and probably, more than likely, probably, even though I'm not already convinced that he's going to get this third MVP, but he easily could get this third MVP based, of course, on the all pro voting, the first team all pro voting that you saw when the all pro teams came out last week or a couple of weeks ago. But here's the bottom line: Lamar Jackson in 8 playoff games has 11 turnovers, 13 touchdowns, and 11 turnovers. In this game, Lamar Jackson actually did his job to a point. He drove his team down. He rallied his team from a bad first half. Okay, you're down 21-10 on the road. Never, especially in that stadium. That is a brutal place to play. Bad weather, cold conditions, whatever. Rallied his team back in the second half and gave him a chance to win. Had two long drives. Mark Andrews' fumble wasn't his fault. He rallies his team down for the game, which seemingly could have been the game-tying touchdown and two-point conversion. Gets him in the end zone. Mark Andrews drops the ball. Again, not his fault, not the greatest throw, but Andrews has to catch that ball. We all know that. So, consider this probably was the best Lamar Jackson has ever played in defeat in the playoffs. By far, I would say by far. Like by far, this is the best he's played in a losing game. But you can't turn over the ball twice in the first half that help put your team in a 21-10 hole. Getting down 21-10 to Buffalo in that stadium, chances are you're not coming back. You're not coming back, especially against a team that doesn't turn over the ball, against a team that runs the ball as well as Buffalo runs the ball. So those two turnovers were killer turnovers, and they were inexcusable. The first one, the interception, I don't know what he was looking at. It was a horrible read. And, you got Tony Romo trying to defend him. No, saying that, Milano was in his face. No. Milano, I mean, Milano, the ball was almost basically out of his hands before Milano even got there. I don't think Milano bothered that throw. It was a horrible read. It was a horrible read. And again, it didn't lead to any points, but it took away a possession that more than likely could have ended up in some points the way Baltimore was moving the football. Buffalo could not stop, for the most part, Buffalo could not stop Baltimore, especially in the second half when Baltimore decided to run the football with consistency, and it was when it became intentional about about them being physical and running the football. They couldn't stop them. The only thing that really stopped, they didn't punt the whole game. The thing that stopped Baltimore was the turnovers. And again, you give, the Andrews fumble. That was a great play. That was a great play. That was a great play by the defender. It's a great play. Knocked the ball out and recovered the fumble. It's a great play. But if you're Lamar Jackson, you can, again, in 8 games, in his career, he has 11 turnovers in 8 playoff games. It's one of the reasons why they haven't won more than one playoff game during his tenure there. You compare that to Mahomes, Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes in 19 games only has 9 turnovers. 19 games, 9 turnovers. Joe Burrow, 4 turnovers in 7 games. Tom Brady, for his career, 45 turnovers in 48 games. Joe Montana in the Super Bowl, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. So the all-time great quarterbacks or the great quarterbacks or the excellent playoff quarterbacks and postseason quarterbacks, they don't turn over the football. It's just that simple. Those guys are not turning over the football at a high level. And the reason why I bring up Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow, these are the guys that Jackson and Baltimore is going to have to get are going to have to compete with to just to get to the Super Bowl. I'm not even counting Jadenn Daniels. Like I'm not even at this point. I'm not even getting to him. He's over in, he's in another conference. But you're going to get through these three guys just to get to the Super Bowl. And if he wins MVP this year, he will have as many MVPs as he has playoff wins. That's not a good look. I'm sorry, that's not a good look. The media would be doing him a favor to give Josh Allen the MVP. They would actually be doing him a favor. I mean, you remember Jokic was catching shit in the NBA for having two MVPs and already in just one championship. He was catching shit. And he already had a championship and a Finals MVP. And he was catching shit. Well, how this guy's about to win a third MVP and he only has one championship? Like, so imagine a quarterback with three MVPs, the most important position in all of sports, three MVPs with not only no championships, no Super Bowl appearances. Like no Super Bowl appearances. Um, Peyton Manning had two MVPs with no Super Bowl appearances, and we were killing him for that. We were killing him. One of the reasons he always had bad postseason games and he turned over the football and Brady made less mistakes. It's just that simple. And they lost games that they had no business losing. Like a home game when they in the year in 2005 when they were 13, they started out the season 13-0 and lost to a Pittsburgh team in 2005. A good Pittsburgh team, but that Pittsburgh team wasn't. Indianapolis wasn't good. Pittsburgh wasn't as good as Indianapolis. They point blank. That Pittsburgh team was very good. Roethlisberger was only in his second year, but they were not as good as Indianapolis, as talented as Indianapolis, and some of the weapons that they had. And that's another thing. Listen, I don't want to hear that he needs more weapons. I know Zay Flowers was hurt, but you have two excellent tight ends. They have a above average offensive line, all world running back. They a great defense. So this might be the most talent he ever has, to be honest with you, because eventually you have to start paying some of those guys, and you're not going to be able to keep all those guys. Like there's a chance that Mark Andrews won't be on the team next year. Now Isaiah Likely is probably a better player right now, to be honest with you, and younger, of course. And you saw Likely made plays that Andrews didn't make in this game, but this was a absolute missed opportunity by Baltimore. They 100% should have won this game, and you gotta give Jackson. He's a quarterback, so he has to take the most blame. You gotta give Harbaugh only has one championship, despite coaching for one of the top organizations in all of football, despite having the amount of talent that he's had, over the course of his career. Defense on both sides of the ball. He only got one championship. Only has one ring. And only has one championship. And remember, before Lamar got there, he was about to get fired. He was on his way out before they drafted Lamar Jackson. So this is a brutal loss for the Ravens. There's no two ways about it. This is I venture to say this is probably worse than the Kansas City one, because at least you lose in the conference championship to a team that was headed towards a repeat and their third Super Bowl in 5 years. Buffalo hasn't, similar to Baltimore, Buffalo hasn't gotten to a Super Bowl since the Marv Levy, Jim Kelly, those Thurman Thomas days. So you didn't lose to a team that's been perennial Super Bowl team. You lost to a team that's basically been in the same boat as you, a team that has had trouble in the postseason and has had their own share of postseason struggles. Not to the level of Baltimore, because at least McDermott and Josh Allen are 7-5 in the playoffs versus Harbaugh. Harbaugh has, of course, Harbaugh. I think is like 13-11, but Harbaugh with Lamar Jackson is 3-5. Again, they've had some talented teams. That 2019 team, when they lost to Tennessee, that team was loaded. They lost a home playoff game to Ryan Tannehill. Think about that. Earl loss, okay, you can live with that one. The first time they lost to Buffalo, Buffalo was better. Buffalo was clipped. Buffalo was just in 2020. Buffalo was a better football team than Baltimore in 2020. Losing to Joe Burrow in 2021 was a rough one. That was a rough one, but Cincinnati went on to go to. Cincinnati did go on to get to the Super Bowl that year. So they were a team on they were on this magic carpet ride, and they had a lot of talent on that Cincinnati team. Looking back on that 21 team that came up short against the Rams in the Super Bowl. The last two have been brutal. Last year was a tough one. That was a game that they absolutely could have won. And this one, they absolutely should have won. And again, you only get so many times where you have a championship caliber team from a talent standpoint. You only get so many times before you have to kind of reset the board and you have to reset the board and you have to probably take a step back in order to take a step forward. And again, to me, with Lamar Jackson, the next step for him is protecting the football and managing the game. Like even in the regular season, if we have to sacrifice big plays for him to be something to protect the football better, then that's so be it. So be it. But in the regular season, he protected the football. He only had 4 interceptions and was not a fumble machine in the regular season. So it wasn't like he was doing this in the regular season, then this carried over to the playoffs. So this is just a postseason thing. I mean, this clearly is something that that's in his head. You saw his frustration at the post game press conference. And again, to his credit, he is a tremendous leader. Has great character as far as how he handles losses. Never points the finger. I have never heard him point the finger. He was upset. He pointed the finger at himself. He picked up Mark Andrews, did not throw him under the bus. How many times have we seen guys that would absolutely throw their own player under the bus in that situation? He did not do that. So he handled himself like beyond a professional. And by the way, Andrews, you got come on, man. You got to show up to a press conference. Like that was inexcusable for him not to be you got to answer the bell. Like if you would have caught I guarantee you, if he would have caught the game winning if he would have caught that 2-point conversion and they went on and won the game, I guarantee you he would have did the press conference. I promise you that. Or caught the game winning touchdown, he would have did the press conference. So you can't sit up here and not show up to the press conference because you had a bad day, had a bad night. That's a part of it. That's a part of the deal. Everybody, guys have bad nights. It's all there is to it. You guys show up and take your medicine. Pure and simple. So Buffalo advances. Baltimore goes home. We'll talk later on more in the week. I'll do a mini pod on the conference championship. So I'll save that for later on in the week in regards to that. The divisional playoffs, I thought 4 very good games. There was really no bad games, to be honest with you. All with the exception of the Commanders-Lions game, all of these games were within one score for the most part. Listen, Kansas City does what Kansas City does. Because I'm gonna spend a minute on the Commanders. Kansas City does what Kansas City does. Like they win these close games. That game didn't even feel like it was as close as it actually was. You never got the sense that Houston ever was going to win that game. Listen, you can complain all you want about the officiating. I understand why They were two. Listen, the calls were bad, but Houston 1,000% did not deserve to win that game. Houston was not going to win that game. So I don't want to hear too much about the officials. I mean, I think now people it's finally came to a head that people have have gotten tired of Kansas City, and I can't blame them. They are on their way to winning a third straight Super Bowl and fourth Super Bowl title in 6 years. And when a team is kicking your ass the way they have been kicking ass the last, half decade, the last, decade or last almost a decade now, then yeah, you get tired of them. I can get it. You get tired of seeing Taylor Swift, and now Caitlin Clark joins the joins the mix, in which that had to be the whitest press box or sweet box in the history of sports. You got Caitlin Clark and Taylor Swift in the same press box. That is, yeah, that is white on white. That is the whitest, like that. Yeah, those two in the same press box. But I get it. People are tired of seeing Kansas City win, and guess what? They're gonna win another Super Bowl. Spoiler alert. So it is what it is. But Kansas City, again, no turnovers. They dominate defensively, 8 sacks. Houston has got to fix their offensive line. I mean, they're going to get C.J. Stroud. I like C.J. Stroud I think C.J. Stroud um, is absolutely a franchise quarterback. But you're going to get him. I watched the same thing happen to Andrew Luck down in Indianapolis. He had too many sacks, and even with his weapons healthy, he still was getting knocked around this season. So they've got to fix that in the offseason. There's no excuse for that. But and again, Houston went as far as they were going to go. Kansas City does what it does, and they advance to their seventh conference championship. Only the New England Patriots, of course, led by Brady and Belichick, advanced to more conference championships in consecutive years with 8 from 2000. I believe it was from 2011 to 2010 to 2019. I think it's from 11 to 19. Yeah, 2011 to 2019. So seven straight conference championships is just insane. It like is in this era. Again, you have all-time great coach, all-time great quarterback, but even still, it doesn't take a lot to go wrong for. You can ask Detroit. Does not take a lot to go wrong to have to slip up at least one time in the playoffs on the road or even at home in one of these games. But they are right now. A they are the dynasty right now. They are the team to beat. They are the gold standard. And until they beat them, I will not pick against them. I'm telling you that right now. I'm not going to do it. Y'all can sit up here and talk yourselves into, yeah, the Eagles are the most complete team, and all they got to do is get a little out of Jalen Hurts. Yeah, it might be Buffalo's year, and Josh Allen not turning on the ball. Yeah, Jaden, it could be, he could be the greatest. He could be Magic Johnson. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to sit up here and make that same mistake and pick against the Kansas City Chiefs. That would just be foolish. And they last year was it. That was it. I picked against them against Buffalo. I didn't pick against them in the Super Bowl. I didn't understand that. I never thought San Francisco was going to beat them, but I definitely picked against them in that Buffalo game. I thought that divisional game at that Baltimore. I thought they would beat Baltimore. I definitely didn't pick against Baltimore with Baltimore, but the Buffalo game, I thought Buffalo last year would beat them in the divisional. Wasn't meant to be. We get to the shocker of the weekend, and it wasn't a shocker for me, even as a Commanders fan, and even being as biased as I was, but I went into the game feeling like it was a winnable game, and I said it on this podcast on the mini pod last week that it was a winnable game because Detroit's defense was in shambles, and the bottom line is when you have the best quarterback on the field and the best player, which if you have the best quarterback on the field, you have the best player on the field because he's the most important player on the field. You have a chance. It's just that simple. Now Detroit made a ton of mistakes in that game, and Washington just capitalized on every single one of them. There were so many times in that game. The two biggest plays in that game were absolutely as great as Jadenn Daniels was, and the Washington Commander offense was tremendous. They had well over 400 and 450 yards of total offense. Um, but as great as and Matt Daniels did not make any mistakes as far as protecting the football. As great as the offense was, the two biggest plays in that game were made by the Washington defense. Down 7-3, Detroit's driving, and you get a turnover, which to you get a turnover, you go back down in the score, you're up 10-7. Now I know Detroit came back to make it 14-10, but 14-3 versus, you're talking about being down 14-3 versus being up 10-7. That's a huge difference. And then of course, down um up 17-14, you get the pick six to go up 24-14, and they never look back. Those are the two biggest plays of the game. Also, again, the interception at the end of the half where you denied them points, and you went into halftime. You went into halftime with a decent lead. Um, I thought Washington's defense, despite all the yards that were accumulated by Detroit and the 31 points, I thought Washington's defense played. Frankly, I thought they played a spectacular game. I mean, you turn a team over 5 times. You you force a 3-and-out to open the game, which kind of not set the tone, but kind of. But again, anytime Detroit does not score, when you hold Detroit scoreless on a possession, you're doing something. You hold Detroit under 33 points, you're doing something. To hold Detroit to 31 points is like holding another team to like 15 or 17 points. That team, I've seen that team put 50 on people. I've seen that team put 40 numerous times. That team scored 525 points this year. 525 points. So, I don't want it to get lost in the Jadenn Daniels, euphoria, how well the defense played. And that the defense is not a great defense. They have some veteran players. I know two of them made the All-Pro team, second team All-Pro, Bobby Wagner and LaBelle. And Fowler, we know Fowler Jr. has had some plays, and they got Payne, and they have Jonathan Allen back. I understand that they have some talent on the defense. I'm not saying that the cupboard is all the way bare, but that defense, trust me, Dan Quinn being the defensive guy he is, that defense is not where he wants it to be as far as the personnel wise. I promise you, it would look a lot different in 2025 when they make some, drafting and off-season acquisitions with the cap space that they have. But so I give them all the credit in the world from that standpoint. But this game was about a quarterback that we are watching. Again, about growing up before our eyes, but we are watching, frankly, a legend in the making, a quarterback that is seemingly doesn't have the pulse, a quarterback that seemingly is just right now just operating at a level that we've never seen a rookie quarterback operate at in Jadenn Daniels. He was in total control of that game from the start. He was throwing the ball. And I looked when I was watching him throw the ball. I was like, "Oh no, he's on." He was on point as far as the accuracy, his command of that game, his just watching again. It was like watching the artist paint. The way he commanded that game, and again, he never ever got flustered. Ever he not when they had to have a score. When they had to have a score, he took them right down the field, and they scored, and they scored, and they would score on Detroit even there were moments when Detroit was trying to itch back in 31-28, took them right down the field to make it 38-28. And that was that. Really, once they got that touchdown to go up 38-28, that really was the ball game from that standpoint. And again, listen, I'll say this about Detroit before I get back to the Commanders. I'll say this about Detroit. they were going to be hard. It was going to be hard pressed for Detroit to win a Super Bowl with that when your defense is in shambles. I don't realize. I don't, and I'm not making like I, I've seen better teams lose in the divisional round and get upset um, in the divisional round, and you say, how could they lose? So like this was not. I'm telling you right now, this was not as big as upset as one may think. I thought that when you looked at the landscape of the NFC in general, with Jalen Hurts, when Jalen Hurts got concussed, with the Detroit defense in shambles, part of me thought that the NFC kind of was not wide open, but it was kind of there for the taking. I really felt that way. That the NFC was kind of could be the NFC maybe a surprise team could get to the Super Bowl. Now again, I didn't know who that team would be. A lot of people there were people that were talking about Tampa Bay. I picked Green Bay before the season, but I was off that at the beginning of the playoffs, considering how they were playing, and they were also banged up. And lo and behold, the answer was right there in front of me in terms of my team and the team I root for in the DMV, the Washington Commanders. They had they end the season. They've now won 7 straight games. They basically had to play for the past 2 months. They've been playing in playoff games since November. Remember, they started the season 7-2. He hurts his ribs. They kind of scale him back, and they lose 3 straight games. Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Dallas. Or Pittsburgh, Dallas, and Philadelphia. So they're 7-5, and again, they were not looking good from an offensive standpoint. The defense was kind of hanging on. The defense was getting pushed around a bit, and that season they easily could have went out. That season could have went left fast. You have people saying they were overrated, that that the wheels are about to fall off. You give Dan Quinn and the coaching staff give them all the credit in the world. You win 5 straight to end the season, and you go on the road and win back-to-back playoff wins on the road, including taking out the team that Vegas had favored to win the Super Bowl in terms of the Detroit Lions. So this is a team right now. And again, I don't get into that team of destiny, Cinderella. I'm not even calling them that. Calling them that. This is a team that has a quarterback right now who is playing at a all-pro caliber level. A quarterback right now who gives them a chance in any game they play. They have a chance because of him. He's that good right now. He's that great right now. He's playing on that level right now. So, we'll see what happens with the Philadelphia game, against Philadelphia. Again, I will save that for the mini pod later this week in regards to what I think about the conference championships. But big time win out of the Commanders. The biggest I'm gonna tell you right now, it is a legit top 5 non-Super Bowl win in my lifetime. I got to put the Super Bowls aside. It is one of the 5 best playoff wins, non-Super Bowl wins that they've had in my lifetime. I would probably have to think some time. Definitely, one of them was against Philadelphia. That 20-6 game, the last time they met Philadelphia in a playoff game that ended Buddy Ryan's head coaching career. If you remember that back in the 1990 playoffs, and that's definitely one of them. That definitely is one of them. And that Bears game too. The Bears game on the road when Dow Green with the ribs took the punt return for a touchdown. That's up there. That's right up there with them too. So this is again a non top 5 non Super Bowl playoff win in my lifetime in terms of the Commanders slash Redskins in the Redskin history. As far as the Philadelphia game goes, listen, I think that we've gotten to the point. Philadelphia gets by, survives the Rams 28-22. The Jalen Hurts discourse is very interesting to me. I I don't think that Jalen Hurts is playing as poorly as people think he is. Jalen Hurts in that game. Now again, I understand that he only threw for 128 yards. But keep this in mind. He had a 44-yard touchdown run. No turnovers. Now keep this in mind. That's a big deal. Like you gotta give these quarterbacks credit who don't turn over the football. Like that's a big if your quarterback does not turn over the football, that is a win. So he has no turnovers. He only threw 20 passes. Terrible weather. The Eagles are a run first defensive team. Period. I think Hurts is a victim of how dominant the Eagles are at the other phases of the game. You have they have the best offensive line in football. In this game, they rushed for 285 yards. Okay, they have a running back who had one of the greatest years in the history of the NFL, Saquon Barkley, had over 200 yards rushing in this game, including a 60-yard touchdown and a 78-yard touchdown. You have a great wide receiver in A.J. Brown. You have the best defense in football. So when you compare Jalen Hurts to that, then it may seem like it may seem like he's mediocre. He's not mediocre. And I don't think he's playing as poorly as people are making it out. You know, you got people saying that they won in spite of him. I don't believe that to be the case. I thought Jalen Hurts threw the ball relatively well. Matter of fact, AJ Brown dropped a couple passes. There were a couple drops in the game. Again, the weather was horrible. The weather affected both teams. There's no question about that. The footing, that was like unlike the snow in Buffalo. That weather to me was way more impactful on that game than the one in Buffalo, the Bills Ravens game. And do I think Jalen Hurts is a top quarterback? No. Do I think Jalen Hurts is somewhere in between, say, 10 to 12, in that 10 to 12 range? Yeah, probably. Or 10 to 15 range? Yeah. Yeah. Now, the question is going to be, and this question is definitely is going to get answered it's going to get answered at least for this year. Can you win a Super Bowl? Can you win a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts as your quarterback in a league with Allen, Mahomes, and with a seemingly budding superstar coming in terms of Jadenn Daniels? And that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out from that standpoint. Because they won the Super Bowl, they got to the Super Bowl, played Kansas City right down to the wire 2 years ago, and he played great in that game. But again, you know, the one I'll get back to how the importance of the protection of the football. The difference in that game was, you know, a strip. Kansas City had a strip sack to go back to the house. That was the difference in that game to me. Otherwise, he played a flawless game. So, you know, we'll see about that. But to me, this game was about this was about Philadelphia being able to win a game in more than one dimension. They can win a game with their defense. They can win a game with their running game. They don't have to have Jalen Hurts playing at the top of his game for them to win win in the playoffs. Now, moving forward, are they going to need more out of the passing game even in this game? I would say yes. I would say yes. That Jalen Hurts is probably going to step it up a notch against Jadenn Daniels. As far as the Rams goes, listen, the Rams played, you know, considering everything that the Rams have had to deal with the wildfires and having to move their families and how they had to play in Glendale, Arizona last week against Minnesota. The Rams, like, if you're a Ram fan, you can't be. I saw some Ram fans complaining about the game. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? They are clearly, the Eagles are clearly a stepping a notch above the Rams in terms of talent. Jared Verse was all over the place. The Rams have some excellent pieces. The Rams are not that far away. Stafford, I thought threw the ball well. He had a number of drops in the weather. Again, he has another game where he plays well in the postseason and comes up short with the team losing. He played great last year against Detroit and they lost. I thought this year he played well in that, considering the weather. I thought he played extremely well, threw the ball extremely well in that weather, and gave them a chance to win. They had a chance to win down the stretch in that fourth quarter. Now, they shouldn't have been in that position. I gotta get to Sirianni real quick. And again, I understand it's hard to knock Sirianni right now because he's on the cusp of a second Super Bowl appearance in 3 seasons. He's won a ton of football games in 4 years. They made the playoffs all 4 years. I'm not being dismissive of those facts. But there was a play. Philadelphia has the ball on the 2nd and 6, and you run a quarterback, you run a bootleg and then lose like a bunch of yards. Then you have to give the ball back to the Rams with about 2 minutes left. Just a absolute dumb call. You've been running down their throats all year, like all game long. Give the ball to Saquon Barkley and keep it moving. 2nd and 6, he's going to get 2 to 3 yards. There's no way they hadn't been stopping him the entire game. I mean, it's just a ridiculous play call. And by the way, your quarterback can't move. Like Jalen Hurts' knee was compromised in that game. That's why he couldn't move for the safety, and he was compromised for the better part of the fourth quarter because of a tackle where he hurt his knee on, which could be a concern in this week's championship. So it's just a ridiculous play call on Sirianni's part from that standpoint. Not Kellen Winslow, but Kellen Moore, Sirianni. You can't have that play call. It was a second. Let's see here, it was a 2nd and 7. So they have 2nd and 7 at their own 33-yard line, and you run a bootleg. You get sacked and you lose 12 yards. They take a timeout, right? They still have one time. They take a timeout. They take 2 timeouts. They get the ball back, and they get the ball back with on that drive. The Eagles only took off 13 seconds. The Eagles only took off 13 seconds on that drive because of that play call, partly because of that play call. Just a horrible play call. Again, LA should have been able to run out the clock with the way that they will run the football. Instead, LA gets the ball back with 2:23 left and the 2-minute warning. So they had 2:23 left and the 2-minute warning. But again, the Eagle defense was able to hold up. And get the win. And the Eagles find themselves in another conference championship, their 9th conference championship in their history, their 8th since 2000. The Rams will be fine. I think Stafford has more years left in them. They are one good draft and a couple maybe 1 or 2 free agents away from being right there, to be able to compete with anybody in the NFC, especially that division. Like that division, they are the favorites to win that division by default. The way that division is looking now with San Francisco, who knows how San Francisco going to look next year, and Arizona and Seattle are kind of teams. So the Rams are in great shape, and again, they had a great playoff run, winning on the road, and winning in Minnesota, and then almost taking out Philadelphia on Sunday. So this is, to me, when you look at the conference championships, I think you got the best possible matchups as far as storylines and legacy games. You're going to get another classic Kansas City, Buffalo, best rivalry in football right now. They've made, 4th meeting in 5 years in terms of playoffs. You got 2 all-world quarterbacks. That was the best possible matchup to me, even better than the Baltimore-Kansas City matchup, to be honest with you, because they haven't met as many times. And then in the NFC, you're going to have the NFC East Championship. You're going to have the team that's kind of been running the NFC over the past half decade in the Philadelphia Eagles versus a upstart prodigy in Jadenn Daniels, and one of the great turnaround stories in the NFL in recent memory in the Washington Commanders. So I think listen, when you have again you have three of the best organizations in all football playing in Philadelphia, Kansas City, and Buffalo. Three of the best organizations in all of football playing in the Final Four, and you have the Washington Commanders, who at one time was long time ago was a part of that class before, of course, Daniel Snyder took over and did what he did. So it should be a great championship Sunday. Come championship Sunday, Eagles, of course, Eagles and Commanders will play at 3, and you have the prime time game, which should be the prime time game. I know they rotate. They rotate. Each year they rotate, but it makes perfect sense that Buffalo and Kansas City will be in the nightcap. We now go to the deep dive, the national championship. Of course, last night you had Ohio State cementing, capping off the 24 season with the 14-2 season with a dominant performance over Notre Dame, 34-23. I know Notre Dame made a late run, but this game was never really in doubt. Even when it got cut down to one possession, you never thought Notre Dame was ever going to win this game. And it kind of was like the fight in the movie Harlem Nights, when Kirkpatrick hit Jack Jenkins one time, and everybody stood up. All the white people stood up, and after that Jenkins beat the shit out of him. That's how this game was. So a lot to take from this game. Ohio State gets their championship. Now I know the narrative has been that redemption, bouncing back from the Michigan loss, bouncing back from losing 2 games in the season. Ryan Day now can exhale and what have you. I'm going to give them the same smoke I would give the New York Yankees, Los Angeles Dodgers, or Boston Red Sox if they won championships back in the day, either now or back in the day. They are the best team that money could buy. That is a $20 million roster that Ohio State has. I repeat, $20 million in NIL money. Okay. Ohio State spends $274 million on athletics. Only Texas spends more, $74 million in terms of football. They have unlimited resources. They get the best recruits. They got the transfers they got this year. You get a running back who was all SEC twice in Junkins, Caleb Downs, who was all world at Alabama, and who will be, without question, he would be a top 5 pick this year if you were coming out. And of course, Will Howard, a veteran quarterback who had been around, who had some success at Kansas State in his last season. So if you're Ryan Day, this was a championship that, frankly, they were supposed to win. And, if you're Ryan Day, you can exhale, but it shouldn't stop here. And I'm telling you right now, that fan base is still going to be on his ass because he did lose to Michigan. So this one championship, by far, is nowhere near enough. It's not. It bought him a couple years. Now, yeah, of course, you're not going to fire somebody. You're not going to fire somebody. It doesn't. But one championship at Ohio State doesn't buy you a lifetime job security. No. Because you still haven't beaten Michigan and won a championship in the same year. That's how crazy Ohio State fans are. They put as much value in beating Michigan as they do in winning the national championship. It sounds insane, but I'm telling you how crazy these fans are. They are nuts. They are Kentucky Wildcat basketball fans, nuts. They are Alabama football fans, nuts. So, I mean, Ryan will get his payday. He gets $1 million bonus for winning the national championship. They'll be favored to win next year, but I'm telling you right now, it's 2025. By 2029, You better have won at least minimum one, if not two more. They're gonna expect with the amount of money that they have from boosters, NIL, with the amount of money that they spend on resources that they have in terms of their endowment, in terms of the Big Ten television money, they're going to expect 2 to 3 national championships a decade. Minimum 2 to 3 a decade. Minimum two, maybe three a decade. That is the expectation of Ohio State. So there's not a case of the game has changed. It's no longer one championship buys you a lifetime membership at a college job, at a college job, especially like a job like Ohio State. No, 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 no. You got the one, okay? You got the one. They see. It's almost like it's almost like Ryan Day. Look at Ohio. Look at the fan base. Look at the Ohio State. That fan base and the boosters. Look at them like the IRS, right? Ryan Day is paid off. His debts are paid, but you still got to earn. You still got to pay your regular taxes. Like you could be in debt to the IRS, but those just because you might pay off the debt or your regular debt, you can that don't mean you're done with paying taxes forever. Like no. You still got to pay these regular taxes. So right now he was in debt to that franchise, to that fan base. Because in their minds, they thinking that we should have already had 1 or 2 national championships. You should have already won minimum 1, if not 2 national championships. And again, we need you to beat Michigan and win a championship in the same year. We need you to do both. Jim Tressel did it. Urban Meyer did it. Woody Hayes did it. That's how you get measured at Ohio State. That is the standard at Ohio State, especially when you have every resource known to mankind. They have every single resource. Again, that is the $20 million roster. As far as Notre Dame goes, if I'm Marcus Freeman, I have to ask myself the very realistic question: can I win a national championship here? Because the team that I had on the field last night didn't belong on that field from a talent standpoint. Now they belong in the game because they earned their way to the game, but didn't belong on that field from a talent standpoint with Ohio State. They need like Notre Dame. Again, Notre Dame has more talent than they had the last time they were in the national championship game when they had zero chance against Alabama. And that was a bad day. We knew from the first possession that game was over. And Alabama actually took their foot off the gas. It could have been worse than 40. I believe it was like 42-14. It actually could have been worse. Nick was nice in that game. He really was. But Notre Dame, if I'm Freeman, and I know that he got a contract running to 2030. He enjoys being the coach of Notre Dame. He loves the university. He's only 40. He won't be 40 until I think this year. He's only 39 years old, so still very, very young, and one of the brightest young coach, one of the best coaches in college football right now. One of the brightest young coaches in the sport. But the NFL is going to be calling. The NFL is going to be calling. Matter of fact, there were reports that the Bears were inquiring about him before they went to direction. Of course, when it got Ben Johnson for the Lions, but you got to ask yourself, if you're Marcus Freeman, can I win? It's a fair question. Can I win a national championship here? Can I beat a team like Ohio State? It might be Ohio State this year. Next year, it might be Texas. It's going to be a team with a loaded roster and with endless resources in terms of their NIL war chest. That's what you're up against now in college football. It is about the money. Yeah, you can recruit. Recruiting is nice, but you got to be able to pay those recruits and also keep those recruits from leaving. That's what Ohio State did this year. Their recruits did not leave. Those top guys came back. They didn't go pro and go to the NFL, and they didn't go to other schools. Matter of fact, they collected other people's star players from other big time schools like Ole Miss and Alabama. So that's the mindset that you have to have in today's college football. It is all about the money. This is an absolute business. You have to have a professional general manager. You have to have, it's going to get to a point where they have capologists. Where I do foresee college football putting in a salary cap at some point. I think it might take 4 or 5 years, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So congratulations to Ohio State. Congratulations to Notre Dame as well. They are they these two teams will be playoff teams next year, and we'll see what changes, if any changes, that are made to the 2025 playoffs in terms of seedings and things of that nature. They're not going to expand for at least another 2 years, but eventually they're going to expand to 14 teams. These playoffs were an undeniable success as far as revenue generated, as far as television ratings for the most part outside the first round. Um, you had a situation where definitely there was a lot of buzz, and you had a number of big time college football programs in the playoffs. I mean, you had a Texas, you had a Georgia, you had a Oregon, Ohio State, you had Notre Dame, you had a Penn State. So you had a number of blue blood schools in the playoffs, along with some schools, of lesser note, SMU, Indiana, and what have you. Clemson kind of is not a blue blood, but of course, a perennial powerhouse. They were in it as well. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But in order to be a championship contender year in and year out, you have to spend buku money. Like, that's all it's to it. You have to spend. You better make sure your NIL war chest is up to par. You better make sure those boosters are up to, you're getting those money, get the money from these boosters. You better make sure that your money is right to even compete. Ohio State won this game, won this national championship because and because they spent the most money. That was one of the top reasons why they won this national championship. They had the most talent because they spent the most money. It's just that simple, and that is the world of college football in 2025. There's no going back. The college football that we've known growing up, that your father knew growing up, that your grandfather knew growing up, that's deader than a cassette tape or an 8-track. You might as well look at that. That college football world is like an 8-track now. It does not exist at all. It is never coming back. Who won the week? Andy Reid. Andy Reid became the fourth coach to win 300 games, both combined regular season and postseason. Joins the illustrious list of legends like George Halas, Bill Belichick, and of course the great Don Shula of the Colts and Miami Dolphins. Andy Reid is fourth all time in terms of wins behind those guys, and he is second all time in playoff wins. Only Bill Belichick has won more playoff games, and if Belichick doesn't come back to the NFL, Andy Reid is going to break that record by next year, and he's only 55 wins shy of Shula's record in terms of regular season wins, and he has a chance. He's 66 now. If he wants to, and I don't see any reason why he wouldn't, outside of any health concerns. Hopefully that won't be on the horizon. That, and Mahomes is only 29. He's going to break that record within 3.5 to 4 years. He's going to definitely in 4 years. But the way Kansas City is running right now, they win 12 to 14 games every year. He probably will break, like I said, 55 wins. He probably will break that record in 3.5 in probably 4 years or so. And don't think Andy Reid does not have that record. When Belichick left, Andy Reid, the lights went on. The Andy Reid, probably his eyes probably lit up, knowing that he had a chance at breaking that particular record with Belichick going to college football, or being in college football right now. So Andy Reid wins the week, and there was a time I was growing up in the Philadelphia area. Remember those Eagles teams. There was a time where Andy Reid couldn't win the big one. He couldn't get past the conference championship. He had the 3 straight conference championship losses before they got to the Super Bowl. He got to the Super Bowl, lost the Super Bowl to New England, had all types of clock management issues. But now he simply is one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, without question. He is a legit top he has to be considered one of the top 5 to 10 coaches in all the top 5 to 8 coaches in the history of the sport. And he wins. He goes back to back to back to back. That will take him to a point to where you probably only say that Bill Belichick is better. To be honest with you, he wins 4 Super Bowls and 3 straight. You probably again the only guy you probably be able to argue against him will be Lombardi. But I mean, to me, it's Lombardi, Belichick, and yeah, it'd probably be Lombardi, Belichick, Reed. I mean, I could say that right now. To be honest with you, I could make a case right now that he's top 5 right now. But he wins this year, he without question, he would be probably one amongst the top 3 coaches of all time. So Andy Reid wins the week. A couple of coaching notes. Kevin O'Connell re-ups with Minnesota, so he's not going anywhere. There was some thoughts that maybe he could possibly be traded. Another team would inquire to trade him. I don't think Minnesota ever had any. I don't think Minnesota had any intentions of that ever happening. So Kevin O'Connell, who has done a wonderful job, we'll see what he does with the quarterback situation. As they have some big decisions to make in the offseason, but 2 out of the last 3 years they've won. He's won. 2 years ago it was won 13 games. This year he won 14 games, despite the early exit in the playoffs. Done a phenomenal job with that outfit down there in Minnesota. And Ben Johnson goes to Chicago. No surprise. Johnson, of course, is considered the brainiac offensive guru from Detroit. I'm telling you right now, and this is not just because of what happened against the Commanders, but I'll say this about Ben Johnson. Um, he had a lot. He had a lot of great pieces around him in Detroit. You're talking about that offensive line. You're talking about a quarterback that had already been to the Super Bowl before he came to Detroit. You're talking about a all-pro wide receiver. Um, he can get real extra sometimes with the play calling, with the gadget plays, some of the trick plays, some of the stuff. I just wonder if this guy is just a great coordinator versus being a coach that can control and run an entire team. Again, it's a huge difference between being a coordinator and a coach. I've seen a lot of coordinators. We've seen a number of coordinators absolutely fall on their faces who were great coordinators, all being some of them Hall of Fame caliber coordinators. Romeo Crennel to me, it was an all time great defensive coordinator, and it just didn't work. As far as the coaching standpoint, Steve Spagnuolo is in conversation for the greatest defensive coordinator of all time for Kansas City. Did not work did not work with his time with the Giants. So there have been situations where you've had coordinators make it and do well, and Brian Billick. I mean, you can go over the course of history, and there have been a number of successful coordinators, John Harbaugh. But what I'm telling you is I think Chicago. I probably wouldn't have hired Ben Johnson, to be honest with you. I probably wouldn't have hired Ben Johnson. He wouldn't have been my first choice. I'm gonna tell you that. He would not have been my first choice. So, but again, he was going to get a job regardless. There were a number of teams that were after him. And again, I don't know if he commands or I don't know if he's a leader of men, to be honest with you. I think when I look at the Detroit, that clearly is Dan Campbell's team. Like Dan Campbell, despite the fact that Dan Campbell is not the offensive guru per se, that Dan Campbell, that team is Dan Campbell when I think about the Detroit Lions. So we'll see what happens. Again, he's going to a situation, he has a quarterback, and they have the Bears, even though their general manager ownership situation is shaky, they have talent on that team. They have play. Their team should be in the playoffs next year. They should be contending for a playoffs. I know the division is brutal, but I like Caleb Williams. They have some nice pieces in terms of the receiver and the running back. They have an excellent defense. They need obviously to improve the offensive line, without question. But they could be easily in the playoffs next year. That's going to wrap up his latest edition of the Ril Dil Podcast. I will be back later on the week with the mini pod and the conference championship preview. Have a great rest of your week. So long.